The following is a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about them Cowboys?
Yeah! Go Cowboys! This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw Dating, preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and broadcasting live from Dallas Cowboys World Headquarters at the Star.
Well, what is up, Cowboys Nation? Welcome to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We're coming live to you from the beautiful Star in Frisco in the SWBC podcast studio. I'm your host, Jess Navarez, for the day, joined, of course, by our Monday lineup, Christy Scales over here, and then Aisha Morrison right here, the lady in green today.
Stop.
Ladies, a bit of a somber mood in the Star today. It's a very interesting mood. Definitely not what you thought this last regular season week would feel like going into playoffs. Not what you thought the mood would be. Of course, we know the Cowboys falling short to the Commanders 26-6. But interestingly enough, this Dallas Cowboys team, despite this feeling, is still heading to the playoffs, that number 5 seed in the NFC. We'll talk about seeding here in just a little while, but let's get right to it. Christy, you were there at the game. You had to witness that in person. How are you feeling today after all of that, first of all?
That was therapist.
Please.
It was the ugh and ugly, that's for sure. And I was disappointed for so many of the Cowboys fans that were there, but the thing that is concern to me is not just the fact that they lost and played so poorly. It's that there were two areas that I think that you really wanted to see they were evaluating heading into the playoffs, and that was offensive line, because they need some consistency on that. There have been a lot of moving parts with the injuries, and especially with Tyler Biotish being out. But the other thing is they wanted to get a look at some young cornerbacks and see if they can get a better handle on what they have moving forward. And so when Deron Bland gets injured and misses most of the second half, and then the young guys who came in to get some reps, Trayvon Mullen and Tyler Coyle, I'm not sure, especially Mullen, how comfortable you feel moving forward with that. So that's what concerns me, is the areas that I was really looking at. I think there are just as many questions coming out of that game as going into it.
Sure. Aisha, how are you feeling on this Monday after that very brutal game by the Dallas Cowboys? How are you feeling today?
I guess we talked about before, just disappointed in a sense, because I was also looking at those two particular things, but I was just disappointed in the fact of how not prepared they looked. And I just the effort, the energy, everything just seemed so off. And I don't know if I've seen them that discombobulated this season. So, and to add to your point with the secondary, I know Dan Quinn in his press conference this past week spoke about the fact that he felt like they had found something in that rotation with Wright, Bland, and obviously Trayvon being the guys. So I kind of was expecting to see a little more of that. So that's why I was a little disappointed that wasn't kind of the route that they were going, because I felt like Nashawn Wright really looked like he was starting to get comfortable in that role, and I don't know if that was just to get those other guys some looks, but I was disappointed as well.
And it was Nashawn Wright sharing time at left outside corner with Mullen was a plan. So the fact that Nashawn, and I've got the number of snaps here, the fact that he didn't, let's see, it ended with Mullen taking 35 of 66 snaps, so 53% of the snaps, and Wright only played 33% of the snaps, just 22 of them. But that was the plan. It's not a reflection. It's not that Nashawn was doing poorly and they replaced him.
Sure.
They needed to see Mullen because they think they know what they have in Wright.
Sure. I think
okay. That's a good way to look at it.
Okay,
No,
that's exactly it. And the other thing is, and we'll get more into it with defense, but a young guy named Tyler Coyle, who's a safety.
We saw him.
And, so they elevated him from the practice squad, and they need to see if he can be the backup slot cornerback to Deron Bland.
Sure.
And so he got a lot of work. And again, they were using this game to see, what do we have if we need to have him play in the playoffs?
Tracking that.
I think for me, it's that classic saying, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Yeah.
Aisha and I were talking about this right before we started recording, and it's one of those things that you saw momentum building up for this team. These last 4 weeks have been a difficult trend for them, with especially those 3 games in 12 days. Gave them the benefit of the doubt for that. Knew that they needed rest after that. They got that rest to come back and play like this. For me, it's a very similar feeling to that Denver game. Very deflating feeling. And I'm still trying to be as positive as I can and hold on to the things that we know we've seen them do. We've seen them communicate well. We've seen them mentally focus on things. But to me, this was a showing of all of the sloppy things this team has done over the course of the season that they corrected, make its return all at once, all in one game, and that's the outcome you get when they don't play as a team. They don't play complementary football.
Oh, they definitely played complementary football, but
In the
all
wrong
3
ways.
phases were bad.
Yeah, exactly.
They were all bad.
And it was just so disappointing to watch. And it was against this Washington team, which, no doubt they get their kudos for this game. But it also should have been a game that you get the lead early in the first half, you pull your starters the second half, you feel good about it, and you leave that game feeling confident. What worries me about this kind of game is you have now 8 days to prepare for Tampa Bay, which we will get into. We have all week to get into that. But that is not a game that you want to feel any kind of self-doubt or lack of confidence going into, because Tom Brady, you cannot stay away from the Cowboys, and I'm so tired of it. But it worries me as far as the confidence level, and it worries me, as much as people say, oh, yeah, burn the tape, and we saw it, we learned from it. Okay, but now it's a matter of you're saying it, but are you going to do it? And there's no more time to waste. It's a now or never situation. You're officially in the playoffs, and so that's what worries me going forward.
Yeah, and to add to what you're saying about their confidence and stuff, I mean, you listen to some of the player interviews after the game, and a lot of those guys seemed confused. They seemed like they were surprised was the word that I think I heard from some of the players, is that they weren't expecting for things to go that way. And again, it's just, I don't know about y'all, but if you really watch this team intently, and I know you do, obviously, I know you do, like, I knew from the first snap.
Yeah.
Me personally. I knew from the first snap. You could feel the energy. And typically, they've shown their ability that even sometimes when they start slow, they're able to figure it out. When they couldn't even figure it out after not being able to figure it out, I was like, oh, let's wrap it up. Let's wrap it up. Sure. Let's go home. Because sometimes your guys just ain't got it, and it just felt like yesterday it was it. And it was a mixture of a lot of things. It was like, typically, if one guy doesn't have it, another guy can pick up there. You didn't even have that.
Yeah, that's what we say about all 3 phases being bad. One didn't help pick up. Although I thought in the first half, the defense kept them in the game. They were only down 1 score in the third quarter, and when they came out at the start of the third quarter, the Cowboys were on defense, and Chauncey Golston, who played a lot in the game because Quentin Bohanna, the nose tackle, was inactive. He and Carlos Watkins combined for a tackle for loss on 3rd down, and they force a 3-and-out. The Cowboys are going to get the ball in good field position to start the third quarter, 1 score down, and then the offense comes out and does a 3-and-out.
Another one
10
out of
3-and-outs.
Yeah, the first of 4
game.
3-and-outs just in the third quarter.
Yep.
So, yeah, and it's like, oh, man, that was so – because the previous drive for the offense was late in the second quarter, where it was the only scoring drive of the game for the Cowboys offense. It was a long drive. It was a good drive.
It was.
And ended with a Dak to CD touchdown pass of 15 yards. And then Maher misses the extra
my
point.
goodness. Stab to my heart.
Special teams.
Stab
Special
to
teams
my heart, Christy.
How you say that was not
special teams were not so special yesterday, and I'm sorry. It hurt so bad. But we'll get into that. I do want to go down the rundown for the NFC playoff seeding. This pains me to say, but the Philadelphia Eagles beat the no-help Giants and took the number 1 seed of the NFC and won the NFC East. Ew, that pains me so much to say. I'm so bitter. Don't get me started. The 49ers taking the number 2 seed after shockingly beating the Cardinals. The Vikings took the number 3 seed, winning the NFC North Championship. The Bucks took the number 4 seed, winning the NFC South Championship. Of course, your Dallas Cowboys took the 5th seed. And let's see, the Giants no help. They took the number 6 seed, and the Seahawks took the number 7 seed after the world won because the Packers lost to the Lions, 20-16 on Sunday night. What a good game that was, everybody.
Man. It was an entertaining game, and the Lions
That was fun to watch.
Yeah, it's just Dan Campbell. I don't know a whole bunch about him from
he's great.
Because I
love
wasn't.
Dan Campbell.
Were we alive yet? I don't know.
Oh man!
Now that's a shot to the heart right there.
I'm talking about when
Everyone's taking shots over here.
Everyone has such nice things to say about him, and I
he's
truly
a
don't
great guy.
have anything. But yes, that game was bomb.
It was so good. And shout out to the Seahawks social media team. I don't know if y'all were following their tweets. Hilarious. They had some Lion King references. It was so entertaining if you didn't get to go see that. All of this meaning that your Dallas Cowboys take on the Bucs a week from today for some Monday Night Football. That rematch at Raymond James Stadium at 7:15 p.m. Central Time. So mark your calendars, everybody. We're going to go ahead and close up this segment. Coming up, we're talking all about the lack of offensive performance, looking at the areas of major improvement they need to make heading into the postseason. This is Girls Talk Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and we'll be right back.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. No, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
I'm Dak Prescott, quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys.
And they snap it to Prescott, who looks right. It's not there. He escapes left. He'll run for a first down.
Just like football, when it comes to crypto, it's important to have a team you can trust. With blockchain.com, I know I'm in good hands. Since 2011, they've been trusted by millions around the world to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency.
Prescott's going to run this himself. Run it up the middle, and he scores.
Whether you're new to crypto or an active trader, they've got you covered. What are you waiting for? Get started at blockchain.com.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We're talking not so special teams this week and Cowboys offense, but first, it is playoff week and the boys need you, Cowboys Nation. Yes, you loyal Cowboys Nation fans. Show your team pride and support this postseason with the best gear in the league. Head to the nearest pro shop or log on to shop.dallascowboys.com, a Fanatics experience, and let's get rowdy. All right, everyone. Trying to stay positive as much as we can today. All right, special teams here. Yikes, the start of the downfall. We'll start there because there was just so many different things that went wrong for this Cowboys team early on, like you said, Aisha. But I think what put the nail in the coffin just early on was Brian Anger dropping the ball and Brian Anger doing his little scramble. Of course, we know that led to a fumble, a Washington recovery that led to their first touchdown by McLaren, who had himself a day. And then, as if that wasn't bad enough, Kevontae Turpin had another muffed punt. Washington recovered this one as well. Ended in a chance for Washington to get a field goal attempt, but kicker Joey Sly ended up missing that field goal, so he helped us out there a little bit. Interestingly enough, though, Christy, I was watching this game and just seeing Joey Sly missing the field goals like he did, Brett Money Maher missing a field goal attempt. I mean, there was just so many things going wrong with special teams in general. When I see games like that, I usually think in my head that has to be something weather related. How was the weather out there, and was it impacting a lot of those plays that you were seeing?
Yeah, in fact, the wind was very impactful. The grass turf actually held up very well. So I think footing was less of an issue, but you saw it with the kicks being pushed. Not just Sly, but you mentioned Maher missing the extra point. Now, on that, I think it was a combination and probably more 70-30. The snap was a little low, and so Brian Anger was able to get the ball spotted. He's the holder, and he was able to get the ball spotted, but I think it did affect the kick, and then the wind also got hold of it and pushed it wide left. But you could even see on the one where Cavante Turpin, where he muffed the punt, and instead of catching the ball with his hands, it actually kind of went off the side of his helmet and face mask and down. The wind was really gusting, and so when it was that particular direction and Tress Way, the Washington punter, had the wind behind him, he got that ball really high in the air, and it carried very, very far. So you saw Cavante have to take a couple of extra steps back, and I think the wind just affected that ball just enough that instead of catching it with his hands, it was kind of high and bounced off. And then even with some of the passes and the like, the couple times where Dak went deep on consecutive plays, good throws overall, but that was with the wind behind him. But when one thing more with Brian Anger, and I did not spot this on the sideline yesterday, but my friend James Smith, who is the Cowboys photographer, he sent me 2 photos. One was Brian Anger's first punt, in which he dropped the snap. He was not wearing gloves. He had a bare left hand. On the rest of the snaps, he was wearing a left glove to help. It was cold. It was really chilly.
It's 42 when I looked.
But it felt colder with the wind and as the game went on. So he switched to gloves, but he didn't have them on for that first one when the ball went through his hands.
Yeah, I mean, you guys talked about most of the stuff, but as far as the starting field position was rough too, and that's something that we've been talking about for the last couple weeks. I know I've been beating on the table about it. Number one, sometimes it's because Turpin is good and get returns. They're getting called back due to penalty, but then sometimes the decision-making is, yesterday I felt like put them in even tough spots, and that's partially because, you're trying to make something happen. You're trying to get your confidence back. You're trying to get back into, but the starting field position, when the Cowboys start close or deep to their own end zone, I'm tight, y'all. Like, I'm stressed because that's why that's where the Cowboys are having these pick sixes. That's where, and granted, like, the field gets smaller the closer you get to any type of end zone. So it's just that situation right there really puts them in a tough spot, and it seems like they've had trouble getting out of that spot. So I'm really looking at what the starting field position is going to be moving forward and how much better it is just to help this offense, because when they are behind the chains in that way, it seems like the counter to that is difficult for them to find, and it always ends badly, it feels like, at this point.
Oh, for sure.
I feel like it's almost like a rubber band analogy, where you have a rubber band and you're pulling. That's the Cowboys trying to build momentum, trying to be confident, trying not to panic in that sense during this game, and trying to get everything together to where you pull so hard it just snaps. And that is almost what we saw. That is not even almost. That's what we saw from this Cowboys team. Of they were trying and trying and trying and trying to the point where it wasn't working, and it was deflating more than anything else.
Yeah, they couldn't dig themselves out of their own holes. But to your point of the bad field position, this is the first half. Cowboys own 10-yard line, own 25, own 21, own 20, own 25. They did get the ball at their own 47. That was after Joey Sly missed the 52-yard field goal, so that's why they had good field position there. And then their last possession of the first half, the one where they drove it 77 yards, started at their own 23. So, and compared to Washington, this is Washington on the Cowboys 20, on their own 38, on the Cowboys 15, on their own 33, one when they were pushed back to their own 18, their own 17, and then the final one a touchback.
There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do about that. Brett Anger had 10 punts for 478 yards yesterday.
And he was tired.
And you could tell towards the end of the game. Yeah, I tweeted, like, they get fatigued too. And 10 punts?
Yeah, well, one thing he was having to do when he was kicking into the wind, you saw some where it was more of a spiral and a little more of a line drive. If he got that ball too high, it was going to blow back. So some of those ones that looked more like a line drive and were a little lower were on purpose to try and spiral that ball
a little forward.
The air. But with the 10 punts, should have been 11. One ended in a fumble when it went through his hands, but 15 possessions. Guys, 15 possessions is a ton in the NFL. Not 10 is about normal, right? And the reason why it was 15 is because you had both teams had all these 3 and outs in the second half and were having to punt so much.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit now to the offense, because that field position wasn't helping the offense, like you said, staying behind the sticks throughout most of the game. So let's go down some stats from this Washington and Dallas matchup. 182 yards total, 118 of which were passing, 62 of which were rushing. Oof, that is painful to say. Averaging 2.8 yards per play. During this time, they had 10 first downs. They were 4 in 18 of third down conversions, 1 of 3 in fourth down efficiency. Of course, we know 1 interception that led to a pick 6. Time of possession, Dallas had the ball for 23 minutes and 48 seconds. Washington had it for 36 minutes and 12 seconds. Again, all things that we have talked about on this podcast, that when these things go right for the Cowboys, typically they're going to win the game. When they go wrong, this is exactly what you see. So, obviously we know a very sloppy game from the Cowboys offense, but you could contribute this to a lot of things. Play calling, lack of, run game, O-line stability, miscues, miscommunications, third down conversion, staying behind the sticks. There's so many things you can sit there and say, but at the end of the day, guys, what is the solution to fix all of this in the next 8 days? Christy, how do you even start?
Yeah, that's the thing. Reestablishing the run game is so imperative. But it's interesting because post-game, Zeke said the same thing that he said the previous week against Tennessee. Now, the Cowboys won that game, but it was hard to run, and Tennessee has a really stout front, just like Washington does. But he was commenting about the movement along the defensive line, and that made it difficult for the Cowboys. So all of us are, the little antenna stood up as we're saying, oh, that's the same thing as he said last week. And so Mike McCarthy was asked that question today. Hey, Zeke said this. What about it? And I'm going to look at my notes as to what Mike said. He said that other than, yes, there's movement along the line. That's very common. But he says that the bigger challenge, more than line movement, is the multiplicity of fronts in the NFL. You basically think of a 4-man front or a 3-4, a 3-man front where you have like a outside linebacker lining up as an edge rusher. But he said you're seeing a lot more of these 5- and 6-man looks. And so the thing is the recognition, right? So communication, recognition, all those types of things. And so you get into these 5- and 6-man fronts, and then they start moving, and it just adds to the layers of difficulty there. So if you want to think about it from a Cowboy perspective of when we do cool stuff and have Micah move around, or we'll have Leighton come up. Yeah, so think of it from that standpoint. All the NFL teams do it. So what the Cowboys have been doing to the other teams is happening to the Cowboys now, and they aren't reacting as well as they should.
Yeah, another thing he said was the decision on Tyler Smith is imperative, is what he said.
Smith or Biotish coming back.
Tyler Biotish is imperative. And obviously said that he had a good workout today and stuff. And, baby, let me tell you, you miss your center. And not only just because, for the reasons you're talking about, because he's the guy who does the checks. He's the one that does a lot of the communication. People consider him the quarterback of the offensive line. And you miss your quarterback. And I'm assuming also, too, you do have some new guys in there. Tyron's in there. The communication between him and Zach Martin has been iffy at times. And there's the continuity, I guess you talk about with the offensive line, is kind of like non-existent right now. And when you're on the road and stuff like that, and you need the communication to be good, I really feel like the loss of Tyler was huge yesterday in particular, and they couldn't overcome it. So for me, moving forward, that is, I think, if the offensive line can at least get to a place to where maybe even back to the same unit they were last week, at least you know then that that guys are kind of in their right spot at the time because of all the shifting that's had to happen, and you would hope that the communication and stuff would be better from there because they're not getting anything from the run game right now, and it just puts so much pressure on your passing game. It puts so much pressure on your quarterback, and it's just been tough sledding the last couple weeks.
Well, you make my transition very easy here. Dak Prescott clearly not finding a groove during this game, to say at the very least. A very bad game from Dak. Let's call it what it was.
Yep.
His probably, arguably, his worst game that we've seen from Dak. I mean, one pick six, but there were multiple times where, again, turnovers could have been an issue. And not only that, it's the way that pick six happened, because let's go over how that all went down. It was the Cowboys' fourth drive, and going back to my notes, because it was like you could see this coming from a mile away, and you did. It happened, but sorry, guys. Okay, so it's 2nd and 6. You see pressure on Dak Prescott, throws the ball away, almost intercepted by Fuller when he's throwing the ball away. And then the very next play, that's when the pick six happened again by guess who? Fuller, who was right there reading Dak all along, taking it down into the end zone. Now, here's the thing. Dak, again, we will credit Dak when credit is due, but we will also say the honest truth of this was an awful game for Dak. He had the lowest completion rating, or lowest completion percentage, rather, of his career at 37.8%. He was 14 of 29, and just going back, because I wanted to go back to the comparable to what was Dak's worst game of the season, right? It was week 1 against the Bucs, and that does not make you feel any better. Back then he was 29 of 14 with a 48.3 completion percentage, so better than what you saw yesterday, at least. But during that game, again, he had 143 yards. During this game, he had 128, and he was 37 of 14. It is just very difficult to even. It's not all Dak's fault. We know this. There's O-line issues. There's miscues. You even go back to the receivers. There was no separation. There was dropped balls everywhere. And the ball placement, of course, is that on Dak? Is that on miscues of not making the routes and running your routes? Decision making, all the situational decision making. It's just so. It's so disheartening to see this team play like this. And, Dak Prescott, he's always been that leader that goes out there and he amps you back up. But what worries me about him, again, is I go back to that confidence issue that we just talked about that a game like this can do. Christy, something that you had wanted to talk about today was keeping Jason Peters out there for so long during this game. Yeah. Why the heck was Dak out there for so long during this game as well?
Everybody.
Well, yeah, I think it's a thing where, first of all, they weren't out of it. Okay, I mean, it was through the end of the third. It was a one-score game in the second half. And by the way, the Eagles had not put away the Giants. If you remember, the Giants came back, and it was a 6-point game late. But really, the no-help Giants.
Can't stand them right now.
But really, it was a thing where I think that the coaching staff wanted to go out kind of on a more positive note and not on all these 3-and-outs. But the point that your 40-year-old left tackle is playing 67 of 67 snaps. And by the way, Tyron Smith at right tackle, and he's been a warhorse since he came back and taken as many snaps as possible. You only got him on the sideline for 3 snaps. So Josh Ball came in for that last series at the end of the game, just the 3 snaps. And then they took Zach Martin out. He was replaced by Dakota Shepley for 2 offensive series, so he only missed like 6 snaps. But that's what was disheartening to me, was that you weren't efficient enough to have a decent drive where the coaching staff could say, okay, we're done. We're going to end on a little bit of a high note, at least a good scoring drive, or, a first down, and couldn't manage that. So, but I like what you said, Jess, about the receivers not getting separation. Kudos to Washington. They are a very aggressive style of defense under a coordinator, Jack Del Rio, a former Cowboy. But those DBs took it to the wide receivers. Well, I mean, the catches were contested. Yep. And the receivers did not help Dak. And then there were some times where they were open and Dak missed them. But I was really and there have just been too many games this season where Michael Gallup is a non-factor.
Yep.
So, and even T.Y. Hilton, with a drop.
The drop.
And when he dropped it, I'm like, oh man, this is
I
going to
knew
be
it was
this
gone.
game.
But when I seen Zach Martin getting pushed around, I said,
Oh.
you know what? They need to go to the house right now. They need to go take a nap right now, because it was a mixture of, like we talked about, it was everything. But I do want to say, and I hope that I'm okay to say this, but I just feel like when we talk about even the receivers and the separation and stuff, like, I could be tripping. It could just be me. There was no motion. There was no, like, what was, I don't understand that what they were doing was not conducive to what the Commanders do well. So, I mean, you played them before earlier in the year and saw you can't run the ball that way, in that particular way, just running straight at them. It's not, that hasn't worked before. And I mean, and then when you go back and look at the tape, a lot of the route concepts are things we've been talking about before. No spacing, guys right next to each other. This is just me. I think nobody helped anybody on that side of the ball.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, though,
I'm sorry.
let's get into that, because I went back and I looked at some of the stats from the last time the Cowboys played Washington, and the run game specifically, because the run game was basically non-existent during this game. So let's talk about that, because Tony Pollard for this game had 7 carries for 19 yards. He averaged 2.7 yards per carry. Keep in mind, during week 4, the last time Cowboys played Washington, he had 8 carries for 6 yards, and it was Tony Pollard's worst game up until that point. So Washington kind of had Tony Pollard's number since week 4, and then you saw it again. Malik Davis had more yardage than Zeke. He had 5 carries for 19 yards, and then Zeke had 8 carries for 10 yards. Again, Christy, I'm so glad you brought up the run game. It was not established, and we've seen what happens when that's not established. But, ladies, we still have yet to get into the defense, and I just checked the time. So let's go ahead and talk about defense after this next break. We're talking about how this defense still pulled off a historic regular season, but why this game could be so worrisome for them. We're talking about it on the other side of this break. This is Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys, and we'll be right back.
At Jigsaw Dating, we obviously want the Cowboys to bring that 6th ring home. But to be honest, we're more focused on finding the person who will put a ring on your finger. That's why we created a dating app that reveals your face through meaningful conversation, so you can date deeper. Because it's personality that matters the most, not looks. Join Jigsaw Dating today, dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, Pepsi-loving football fans, it's time we had a lesson in trash talk. And I'm not talking about that stuff that happens on the field. What I'm talking about is trash, and it's the only thing that belongs in your garbage can. No, recycling might not be as thrilling as converting a 4th and long, but next time you're thinking about throwing that Pepsi Zero Sugar bottle away, just cap it back up and pretend you're down by 6 with the recycling bin wide open. Know the difference? Make a difference. Be a team player and recycle. Visit PepsiTrashTalk.com to learn more.
With Smoothie King's original Angel Food and new Angel Food Slim without added sugar, you no longer have to choose between treating yourself and hitting your goals this summer. You don't have to choose between great taste and feeling great. Because at Smoothie King, every blend is made with whole fruits and no syrups, so you can satisfy your cravings without compromise. The only choice you will need to make is which one is best for you. Try our classic Angel Food or the new Angel Food Slim, blended without added sugar. Smoothie King, rule the day.
Welcome back to Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. We're getting into the defense, but let's talk about the ACMs, because this is how we country. Country music's biggest party of the year is coming to the Ford Center at the Star in Frisco. The Academy of Country Music Awards are always bringing you country music's brightest stars together under one roof, and no one does country like Texas. Witness history on May 11th and get your tickets at SeatGeek.com.
You going?
Oh,
I know you like
I
country
wanna be
music.
there.
You going, ain't you?
You know what? I would love nothing more than to be there. I have my boots ready to go. Oh, God. I love
You
some
like country music?
Yeah. No, it's fine.
I was like,
No, I'm a little more old school.
What you like?
what do you mean?
Well, like Judd's, Barbara Mandrell,
yeah,
people like
that's
that.
fine.
Which to you guys is ancient.
No. Look, I'm a
But
Garth
I
Brooks
like
fan.
Carrie Underwood. And
I'm
people
a
like
big
that.
Garth Brooks fan.
Okay.
I love Garth Brooks, George Strait, Alan Jackson, all like the classics, right? But I can appreciate some new country too. But yeah, my first concert was actually a George Strait concert, to which Taylor Swift was the opener.
Wow, that's
Can you
fantastic.
believe that?
He puts on a great show.
Oh, so good.
And it's a very famous part of Texas Stadium lore when he sold out the full week, back in the early 1990s. So
There you go.
yeah, I've got some great stories, but I can't tell
See,
those on
I
air.
was just trying
Uh-oh.
to make conversation. I don't know nothing about no country music. Y'all saying
I'ma
people's
send you
names.
some
It sounds
Garth
like
Brooks.
rocket scientists.
It's okay. It's okay. We're
It's
working
all right.
on the Taylor Swift fan base for Aisha.
Y'all
over
gonna have
here.
to fill me in,
And then
but
I'm
I
gonna get Christy in on this Swifty train as well. All right. Moving on now, because we're talking defense, who gave Washington 309 total yards, 158 of which was passing for Sam Howell, 151 rushing yards. Sam Howell having his NFL debut against the Cowboys, looking not too bad. Within that time, some key players I wanted to mention: Malik Hooker having himself an interception, the third of his season, matching his career high from his rookie year back in 2017 in Indy. Osa Odigizua had 7 combined tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 1 sack, his 4th sack of the season. Sam Williams had 2 combined tackles, both were tackles for loss, by the way, 1 sack, and that was his 4th of the regular season. Micah Parsons, 2 combined tackles, credited with half a sack, so with 13.5 sacks for the season. That is a new career high for Micah Parsons. Since last season, he had 13. All right, this is a little bit better to talk about in some ways, because the defense put up a fight. They were fighting all the way until the end, and I think something that always worries me about games like this, and it did worry me, especially on the defensive side, was injuries. So, Christy, there was a few guys that we saw go into the medical tent, one of which was Deron Bland. Mike McCarthy giving an update on Deron Bland today. What was that update?
Yeah, that looks like he'll be able to practice this week. So he, once again, same as last week, starting outside in place of Anthony Brown at left cornerback, and then moving inside to play in the nickel, in the slot, in nickel and dime situations. And that's when Nashawn Wright took over at left corner, and then Trayvon Mullen rotated in with Nashawn Wright. And then, as I mentioned earlier, Tyler Coyle, the safety, who Mike McCarthy, I asked him about him today, said he's got some cornerback traits, and they thought that the reason they elevated him from the practice squad this weekend was they wanted to see if he could get some work in the slot and match up there. And it was interesting because when the inactives were announced and it becomes official 90 minutes before kickoff, Quentin Bohanna was a surprise to me, not playing defensive tackle. Remember, early in December, he had missed a game with a knee injury, and he's been limited in practice the first few weeks of December, so they just wanted to make sure he was going to be okay with that knee, so that gave Chauncey Golston and Carlos Watkins more time. But they wanted to see Tyler Coyle, but we didn't want to see that much of Tyler Coyle in the second half because of Bland's injury. The other main thing was Jaron Kearse. Luckily, he was okay. He came to the Blue Medical Tent for a cognitive evaluation. Past that, surprisingly, did go back into the game. He was allowed to go back in because he passed the cognitive test, but I was a little surprised that they put him in at that point in the fourth quarter, but he did do another defensive series.
Yeah, he's Jaron Kearse. I feel like that has been like every game he's had something. He's been nicked up.
This one he fell back and the back of his head hit the turf, and so they just wanted to go ahead and take every precaution and give him check him out in the Blue Medical Tent.
Well, with Tyler Coyle, I wonder if that has anything to do with what you mentioned earlier about last week about McKenzie. And them not being sure.
So Mackenzie Alexander was the guy, and he did a lot of work in the slot as a cornerback, nickel corner in Minnesota. But what happened was he hurt his, was it hamstring?
I think it was hammy.
A soft tissue injury.
It was hammy.
And so he wasn't available to be elevated last week, and he's still not available because of the injury. So that's why they had to experiment with Mullen and Coyle.
Well, I will say,
sorry, real quick, just a side note, since we're on the topic of injuries, is during his press conference earlier, Mike McCarthy said things are looking up for both Leighton Vander Esch and Jonathan Hankins.
And that's going to be huge,
Which
literally
is-
and figuratively.
Oh,
to
yeah,
get
they're big
Hankins.
guys.
Yeah, but
They're big guys.
Hankins with the run defense,
Yep.
and then Leighton, who's had such a great year,
Yep.
and so important with the communication as well.
Yeah, and you've seen, I think, if anything, the absence of Leighton Vander Esch will give Cowboys fans the appreciation they have always needed to have for Leighton Vander Esch, and especially the growth that he's had over these past 2 seasons. I'll give him that. But let's talk run defense real quick because we have 5 minutes left. This podcast goes by so fast when I'm talking football with y'all. But run defense, Aisha, there was somebody that I know you wanted to get into, Chauncey, having himself a game. He had a 90.3 rating per PFF during this game.
I was waiting.
There you go.
I mean, you mentioned that Bohanna wasn't available to go. It surprised me as well, but immediately I was like, oh, Chauncey. Chauncey, and I went to college in Iowa, so I'm familiar with the Hawkeyes and stuff, so Chauncey might be somebody I just pay attention to a little bit more, but he was so stout and active, and I see that at DT, he put on some size in the offseason. His size is a big deal, but his speed to those inside guys is too much, and he's able to get off the ball and make tackles. He was so active yesterday, and so although I was not happy to see Bohanna not playing, I thought this was a good opportunity for the coaching staff also to see what he is now capable of at the DT position. The young guys, Osa, Sam, those guys, I felt like this game was good for them to build that confidence, especially in what they did in the run game. And as far as the secondary, if you eliminate, we've been saying it for weeks, you eliminate that one big play a game, this defense to me looks a lot differently than what what we've been seeing. So we'll see how it goes with the secondary.
Sure, and that run defense, that's been a topic of conversation pretty much all season at this point. How do you both feel about the run defense? And we're talking in 8 days, you have a potential Leighton Vander Esch who's likely to return, Jonathan Hankins likely to return at this point. I'll be surprised if they don't. But something to keep in mind when thinking about this. What we've seen from the Cowboys are these ramp-up phases where once somebody comes out of injury, they don't necessarily jump right back in full speed, full force. They kind of grow their way to it. You're in a bit of a different pickle now because
It's playoffs.
it is playoff
It's not
time. You don't have time for that necessarily like you would a regular season game. How do you think that's going to be managed? And do you think that run defense is going to be strong enough going into postseason when you're facing a Tampa Bay team?
Against Tampa, yes, because their strength is passing and their wide receiver core.
Oh, Tom
I'm worried
Brady.
about the secondary. I'm worried about the cornerbacks, not the
Sure.
run defense for this first round of the playoffs. But to your point of for a full playoff run, yes, the run defense. But yes, having Hankins back and Vander Esch and Bohanna as well. So it will be have our big bodies back
Sure.
up the middle. So that's going to help a lot. But the other thing about with the practice schedule, I think it's not just that there'll be an extra day of preparation this week because the game is on Monday night. It's that I think we're going to have real practices this week.
Yeah.
Honestly, the last 3 weeks,
They haven't had the opportunity.
It's
really
been like
to.
jog throughs.
Yeah.
They haven't had a padded practice, and that's not unusual because you only get 14 padded practices in an 18-week regular season, and you're scaling back anyway in December because of fatigue, and you want to keep your guys fresh and stuff. But just to have a real practice where you can really work on. Now, you're not hitting each other. You're not tackling. If someone goes to the ground, that's by accident. Everyone stay on their feet. No, you're never going to see people go to the ground for tackles in a regular season practice. But just to be able to work on your run fits and your combination blocking and things like that. Hadn't had that for nearly a month.
You can
And
tell.
Yeah, you can tell. And
You can
really.
tell.
And so I think that's really, really important this week.
That is such a good point, Aisha. I'm going to go back to you for this. The pass rush under scrutiny these past few weeks with the lack of sacks and pressure, really, that this defense was doing for the start of the season. Is it still as effective as it used to be, or can it still get to that level? What do you think is going to help that pass rush, especially when we're talking about a Tom Brady who can get that ball out of his hand quicker than people blink? I mean, you're talking about Tom Brady this week. Can this pass rush make an impact on Monday night?
Well, with
a week from today, not tonight.
With him getting the ball out quickly, hopefully your linebacker play is better because they're using a lot of intermediate stuff to just get rid of the ball fast, and the Cowboys linebackers are having some trouble with that. So hopefully that's kind of mediates some of the short pass, intermediate stuff. But I also feel like when you get Hankins back, when you get some of those guys that have that size back, they can take on double teams. They can take on more guys. And this is just me. I feel like since those gentlemen have gone out, the stunt game has been minimized just because of that size in the middle and the attraction, how many guys that attracts, and the DNs be able to kind of be free in that regard. I'm really hoping that when Hankins and those guys comes back, not only does it put you in more favorable positions to be able to rush the passer, but also too, hopefully having that size opens up some of the pass rushing ability, because you have guys doing things right now that they're not typically accustomed to. I don't consider Oso Digizua like a super stout, like I'm going to stop the run guy, but he's doing it because he has to right now. You have a lot of guys feeling and doing things they have to do right now. Hopefully you get Leighton Hankins back, and that kind of restores some order, and guys aren't playing out of position or doing things that they're not used to typically doing.
I love that.
Great point.
Good point. Very good stuff. All right. Obviously, this game, hard to give flowers to somebody in this game specifically, so we're going to change it up this week. We're going to say our regular season flowers, because the regular season officially over for everybody. That is crazy. That went by very fast.
Wow. Now that's
very fast.
This is
a regular
for the
season.
Whole year?
Just for the regular season, somebody who might have surprised you, somebody who exceeded expectations, somebody who continued to impress maybe when you didn't think they would.
Okay.
Who are you giving your regular season flowers to?
You need some time.
No, on offense, I'm going to go with Tyler Smith.
All right.
Both
That's a good one.
Yeah, because
that's a really good one.
I mean, to step in at left tackle with a week, after doing all of training camp and preseason at left guard, and sure, would he end up with like 8 holding penalties or something like that? But overall, no, really, I'm going to say Tyler Smith. He's been stout, and he's going to be a fabulous player.
He's going to be so much better.
And even just with Jason Peters in there to help him. Oh my goodness! Yeah. I can't imagine how much that's going to excel him.
I'm also basing that on what the coaches and teammates say about him, how studious he is, and
he's just a nice guy.
He's a great guy.
He's such a nice and
guy.
polite guy. Aisha, who gets your regular season flowers?
The training staff.
There you go.
excellent.
That's a good one.
I don't really know how else to just to even be in a position to where you're getting guys back that we were worried about to go into this run. They've done so much this season. It's been crazy with injuries. Dak Prescott, Tyron, this could have went so sideways if they weren't able to get guys healthy and ready in the right time. So, again, for the second season, I think I said this for them last year. I was like, they're the real MVP.
Yeah. So
the training staff, Britt Brown, those folks, real MVP.
Our Claire that we had on this
Claire,
podcast.
And Jim Maurer and Greg and Hanson,
everybody.
And they do a wonderful
fantastic job.
All right, think of a player, because
That don't count.
It counts, but I think we can all agree. We can all agree that they all get our flowers.
Absolutely.
Mine is Brett Money Maher, because I was such a hater. I was such a hater when this happened.
You cannot be a hater on Brett Maher.
When it first happened, Christy, you have to remember.
Everybody was hating.
I was so terrified at what we were gonna see.
They was hitting people.
No, Brett was not.
Okay,
but
well,
but to your point, that was my number one concern going into training camp is who's going to kick the ball. Do you guys remember who the 2 kickers were?
I remember.
Rookie Jonathan Garibay from Texas Tech, and then Liram Hairulahu.
Oh, yeah.
And neither one of them made it halfway through camp. They brought Brett Maher in. And once they signed Maher and saw the first couple days of him kicking, I'm like, we're good.
But you have to remember, the old version of Brett Maher is what was in my head when this happened. But I will happily eat crow to say, good for you, Brett Maher. You've officially transformed into a brand new man, a brand new player. And I'm just so happy that he's had the season that he has, the success that he's had this season. He deserves it. Good for Brett Maher.
Yeah, that's a great choice.
I got mine.
All right, let's see.
It's Deron Bland.
anything
Yeah.
but bland.
Because if you don't, I mean, he showed us from the minute he came on the field in preseason. I'll never forget being like, who is this guy? Everybody's like, who is this guy? He's trended up all season. I think his story is inspiring, just being a 5th-round draft pick and to become a starter, take advantage of his opportunity. And I don't know what we would be without him right now.
Yeah, the fact that I'm panicked that will Bland be available to go against Tom Brady and the Bucs.
That was
He's become a player, and for this to be his first year.
Yeah, great choice.
Just imagine.
Can't wait to see how much he grows and his mind grows and how much better
me
he
chills.
gets, because he has the instincts already. So
Yeah, he certainly exceeded expectations. That's a great choice.
I love that. Ladies, always such a fun time, even despite a Cowboys loss. Still love being here to talk football with y'all. Cannot believe how fast this regular season flew by. But the good news is we're officially in the postseason, ladies. And we had a lot of good conversations today. So with all of that, thank you all so much for joining us. For Jess Navarez, Christy Scales, Aisha Morrison, this has been Girls Talk, Boys Talk, presented by Jigsaw, the preferred dating partner of the Dallas Cowboys. Go have yourself a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?